Hello, my name's Pete and I'm going to take you today through some brand new toolkits, the multi-tool kits from Sizzix. And we've really gone to town looking at what you guys use day in, day out, and we put these together for you and indeed for us as makers. So let's just take a quick look at each one individually. Firstly, we have the Surfacez toolkit. This is all about cutting, it's all about distressing, more on that later. Then next, we have our Effectz kit. Now this one is for using your Effectz products, or indeed any pastes, any acrylics that you may have at home. And last but not least, our intricate toolkit. And this is all about intricate die cuts. It's all about sequins and beads and rhinestones as well. So let's take a look. So let's start with the intricate toolkit. I'm going to open this up for you. This is how it comes packaged. So we've got the lovely box, tells you all about what's inside, and this is the kit itself. Now, first and foremost, there's the handle. Now this is a silicone-coated ergonomic handle, very comfortable in your hand, and you'll notice that it's double-ended. Now that is quite important because some tools you want to use all the time, some tools just occasionally, some tools you'll want to use together, as I will with this kit, so you can have one on each end. But if you choose to use just a single tool, we do have an end cap which just clicks in place, and all of the parts, they just slide and click. And that's it, you're ready to go. So let's take the end cap off, because what I want to show you is the three main elements in this kit. First of all, there's our pickup tool. Then we have this wonderful tool which allows you to manipulate your small die cuts, your sequins and beads, when you stick them down afterwards. If you want to just microscopically readjust them, which we do from time to time, then this piece of kit comes in very handy. And then finally, this is our it's an eraser, but it's a dry adhesive eraser. So if you're using foam pads, for example, say you put something down with a foam pad and you want to reposition it and there's some residue left, this comes in very handy indeed. I've been looking for one of these for a long time. So this will take care of anything like tape rollers, double-sided tape, things like that. So any dry adhesive, you can take it right off your project. You don't spoil your project. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my pickup tool on there, and you'll notice it has this cover, because with the pickup tool, because it's slightly tacky, sticky, we want to keep it that way. So, and the great thing about it is, if it loses its tack, which it will eventually, especially when you're handling paper or card, then you just wash it under a tap and it's good to go again. So that has a cap, and then finally there. So now that's ready to go. So I've got my push tool and my pickup tool attached, and this is how I would keep this pretty much. And that's why with the kit you are getting 3 handles, so you can store them in a pot. You haven't got a ton of tools, just the 3, but you've got the other heads alongside them. So let's take off the protective cap. I'll put my adhesive rubber to one side for a second, and I'm going to be working on, this is a die from sets called Crazy Characters #1, and you'll notice that I've die cut some very fine fiddly pieces, and just by trying to turn these over you can see how fiddly that is, even with a pair of tweezers. This is where this pickup tool is going to come in really handy. Now I'm using some express glue, and we know that when we use glue, sometimes if too much comes out, luckily with this I can just scribble onto my media mat. If too much comes out, we don't want to be working on our smaller die cuts. So what I'm going to do is pick up the little die cuts and put them in position, and I can see what's happening. It's not like with tweezers. Tweezers is a different kettle of fish altogether. So let's just place that into the glue, pop it to one side. Now you see there, it's kind of moved slightly. So what I'm going to do is use my little push tool and get that back into position and reposition it perfectly, because you can do that of course once the adhesive is still wet. Then we'll come in with the eyes. Now the eyes come in 2 pieces. This is the white of the eye, or cream, which I'm using in this case, and then there's the center. So I'm going to pop that in there perfectly. Now, being very fastidious, I want to make sure that I want to move that down ever so slightly. So I'm going to use my push tool. Incidentally, if you've got any glitter, you can pick up glitter out of the pot and apply it straight onto your project. It's really cool for that. It's almost like a little shovel. So then we'll do the other part of the eye. And finally the mouth. Now this one would be quite a challenge. And it allows you to pick them up and turn them over and things like that as well. So let's pop the mouth into the glue. So you see we don't get too much glue on the die cut. And we'll pop that mouth down there. There we are, all in place. If I wanted to adjust that slightly, if I wanted to tilt it another way, these are very microscopic adjustments, of course. 2 more pieces on the edge of our typewriter here. There's 1, and finally 2. And it really does help for the positioning of these pieces. It's a tool that I've used a lot in the past in different forms, and wow, it really, really does make a big difference. So let's take the die cut in its entirety and attach it to the base card, which bears the legend, "You're just my type." So we'll pop that about there. That's kind of lovely by itself, you know, but I'm going to add a few bits and pieces. We're going to bring in the bling. I've got some sequins and beads. Sizzix sequins and beads indeed. Now these come in individual pots, but I like to take them all out of the pots and mix them up. A lot of people don't. But what I'm going to do is tip some of those into there, thus. So it gives me the choice. I'm going to take some of these little silver sequins, and I'm going to start popping them around here, and that's going to give me some bling when it all moves around, when the light and shadow does its trick. These sequins, oh boy, they're going to look pretty special. So I've got that in place with the glue. Now I can reposition that. I can move that with my push tool, get it where I want it. There we are. There's another one there. There's an errant one which came out. We got 2 together there. Let's pop that one down there. There we are. And I'm going to use my push tool just to get that into position. Now it's not just sequins and beads, of course. You know, there are other things. We've talked about rhinestones. So I'm going to show you what we can. There are 2 types of rhinestones. There are the ones that are adhesive backed and the ones that are not. This works equally well with both. And I'm going to show you how we can take them. So these are adhesive backed. Now, because of the tackiness of my push tool, I can just push those across the plastic and pop them into place like that. And if you've messed about with tweezers and picked these up, and you know how you hold them and halfway to your card they just ping off across the room and you could never find them until they stick to the bottom of your shoe at some point in the future. With this push tool, there's none of that going on. It's really cool. And once they're in place, you can use your push tool to just give a little bit of pressure to make sure that they stick down perfectly. So there we have it. So that's the last one. I'll just make sure that's adhered in place. Now I'm going to stick this onto my base card. So now comes the point where I'm going to use my adhesive roller. So let's take off my push tool and I'll snap in my adhesive rubber. I don't know that I need it at this point, but you have to trust me. So now what I want to do is sometimes when we put adhesive like this, we can put it on an edge of a die cut of something, and it just goes slightly over the edge like that, which we don't want. So there's a little bit of adhesive just there sticking out. And that's going to leave a bit of mess on my card. And in the way that the light picks up the sequins, beads and diamantes, hopefully you can see there that we've got this glue. So it is a dry adhesive, as we call it. Now we want to get rid of that, of course, because it can ruin a really good project. So if I simply take my adhesive rubber, and that's going to pick all of that off. So I'm just going to rub that down there. And it does it without interrupting or making a mess on the texture of your card. So we've kind of saved this one. We've saved this one. So there we have it. So we've used our pickup tool, our push tool, and our adhesive eraser, and it's absolutely ideal. It's absolutely perfect for intricate work with die cuts, with sequins, with beads, with rhinestones, and indeed anything else you can think of. Okay, now it's time to look at our Surfacez kit. I particularly like this one because I do an awful lot of cutting. Now let's open it up and show you exactly what you're getting. As before, we've got everything on the box, tells you all about the different elements. But this is what we have. So we have our handle again, which is double-ended. We also have the end cap, should you choose to use just one of the heads at a time. Now, the first thing, this is an absolute go-to for me, my craft knife. Very, very important that we have this protective cap as well, because you don't want to store it in a pot with the blade pointing upwards for obvious reasons, and you don't want to store it with the blade pointing down, at least not without having the protective cap. And if you're one of those makers who's a social maker, maybe you go around to friends, or you go to workshops, you go to crops, maybe you take your craft tools to the caravan at the weekend because the great British weather is not behaving itself. So there we are. There's our blade. You'll see it's quite a thick blade as craft knives go. So that means it's strong, because you don't want these snapping when you're using them, of course. And it comes to a fine point. Now I'm going to put that one away for a second and just bring in another head. This is our distressing tool. Now you'll see there's a curved blade in there, and it's used for really elegant paper distressing, or if you like your mixed media makes, this is absolutely ideal. It's something that we've had in our range for a long time. So let's pop that there. And then finally, now this one's great. This one's great because talk about a game changer. Remember when these came out for trimming your wrapping paper? It's like, oh my goodness, where have you been all my life? It's a wonderful tool. And again, because we've got this lovely handle, really ergonomic to use. I will be taking this home at Christmas time. I'm going to borrow this one. But they all twist on, twist off, really firm, really easy to go. I'm going to take you through these individual tools one by one. So, as I said, normally with this, I would have my craft knife on the end. It doesn't impede what I'm doing at all. But with my end cap off, I can just switch these in and out, because this isn't the kind of tool that I'm going to be using every day necessarily. This one I am. This one I might use once a week, perhaps. So, but I've got it there. So I don't need it to be attached to a handle all the time. But when I do need it, I know that I've got it. So let's use the end cap. Let's pop that on. So it gives it a lovely sleek look. And I'm going to show you something as well about this tool and the cutting blade where we can swap blades, which is really cool. Now, okay, let's cardstock. So if you want to cut your cardstock down to size, you don't need the scissors. Look at that, straight through, so clean. Obviously for accurate cutting, you'd use your craft knife, or you'd use your trimmer, for example. But with this, it's clean, it's efficient, it goes through that, knife through butter, but yeah, it really does. With this as well, you can create curves, whatever you want to do. But that's just cardstock. There's 216 gram color story cardstock, the Sizzix cardstock. What about something like this? Now, this is a thicker card. Obviously, it's part of our opulence range. It is the silver glitter card. Now, let's see how it copes with this. No different, exactly the same. Absolutely wonderful, really, really cool. then, you know, there are so many. Let's take it. I wish. Nah, you know what? This is wonderful. This stuff is. I'm gonna use the gold one. It's called Texture Roll, and it comes in different surfaces. We have all metallics, but we also have some plain, and it comes in a roll like this. Now, it's almost like a cross between card and fabric, for example, because it's almost indestructible, very difficult to tear. So if we were using this for, say, the front of a journal, which is what a lot of people use it for, I could lay it down, I could get it to the size that I want. You know, we'll cut straight through that. And this is a tough material, it really is. But it's great for that kind of thing. And again, we'll go up the middle of this as well. We get a lovely, I'll go on a curve. Ah, wonderful. So for just getting your card and paper down to the size you want, it's absolutely ideal. And of course, at Christmas time, it really pays for itself, this one. Now, let's take that off. And let's look at our craft knife. Because obviously I'm very particular about my craft knives. I used to use a retractable one, but you know, the thing about this handle, this lovely, soft, ergonomic handle, is it's very comfortable. And if you've been cutting for half an hour, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because it does take its toll on the old fingers. So it's a great craft knife. Obviously, you know, we can just run down cardstock like this. This is quite thick cardstock. It's very controllable, very easy to use. It's lovely with that rubberized grip. It really is. Obviously, against a steel ruler, it's perfect. If you have to cut around something delicately, because of the way it comes to a point, you can do that. You're getting that accuracy. But the point is, it's a really great cut. So let's take some matte board and some mixed media board. Now this is really thick stuff. Obviously, if you're going to cut this, sometimes with a trimmer, even with a guillotine, it can be tricky, you know, to get a really clean cut. So I'm going to use my craft knife. Now, this is something that I always do. When I see people cutting heavyweight things like this, they will try and do it in one go. Now, I'm going to do that. I'm going to cut through. I can do it, okay? But it's hard to stop and start. It goes through in one go, which shows you just how sharp this is. But obviously, you don't want to be pressing down on a blade like this. So what I like to do instead, is making sure that I hold this upright, is make 2 or even 3 cuts. It's so much better, so much nicer, and so much better for your blade as well. So let's take the matte board. This is really thick. Let's see, and I haven't tried this. I want to see if I can do it all in one go by putting a lot of pressure. It's, no, I get the sense that it needs, oh, I did it in one. Honestly, I haven't tried that. There you go. But silly me. So let's try it. Let's do the 2 again. This is so much better. I would never ever put that sort of pressure on something like this. So I've used 3 cuts there. Same quality of cut, no problem at all. That is really impressive. Yes, I'm impressed with myself for once. So let's take something that I've done. I've stamped onto this piece of card. So I'm going to trim it down to size. Now, I'm not measuring here. That's not important for the purposes of this demonstration, at least. So I'm going to kind of just hold it against the ruler. Yeah. Lovely clean cut. And one more. Now, you know what? At this point, if I wanted to ink the edges of this, I'll put that to one side. I could bring in my distress ink, and I could bring in my blending tool. Now this guy, it's fantastic. Let's just take this off. So that just snaps on in exactly the same way. And you can get these heads separately and also the foam pads. And then you pick up your foam pad and you start inking around the edge. So if using distress inks, distress oxides, or anything like that is your thing, we do have a head which fits onto any of these tools. So let's just move that to one side. Now, I'll put my, no, I'm going to take that off because I'm about to use my distress head. Now, if you've not come across these before, they're absolutely wonderful. It's something that I know Tim Holtz fans are very fond of, if you like that kind of vibe, if you like that. But, even using just plain cardstock, just white on white, distressing this edge gives it a lovely, it's almost like a lovely vintagey feel, but it doesn't have to look vintage. It's just that bit of distress. It just adds something, I don't know. It's a technique I used to use an awful lot. So much so that I had to wean myself off it. But you know what, it's such a great technique. You have to bring it out every now and again. You see, we've got the blade. We've got this blade in here now. If you want to hold it like that, if you want to hold it like that, it's entirely up to you. But of course, having 4 blades, it's going to add to the longevity. And my original one of these, I've still got it. And I think we're going back 6-7 years, and it's as good as it was on the day that I first opened the box, to be honest with you. Now we've got that lovely distress, and then we could just mat that onto another piece like that. You see, we've got another distressed edge, and then when you put that onto your card front or something, you can see the difference that makes. It kind of takes it. If they were straight, crisp lines, it wouldn't be the same. You don't get the same kind of vibe. But another thing that you can do with this, with your distressing as well, is not just the rubbing back into, but you can actually use it to saw into the cards, so you can make those little nicks, which are so pleasing. If you're trying to do like an old distressed document. So there you go. We've gone one step further. With that one, you can glue it down. You can tape it. You can staple it. You can do what you want. But just a really cool tool. And it's not just. I mean, we can do it with our lovely textural as well. You can get that lovely edge. Our opulent cardstock, even things like our mixed media board. So if you were doing a really, look at the way that chews up those edges. It's just great. So if you are doing a mixed media piece, and if you want to make it look old and careworn, then there's no better way to go. How about that? Really, really cool. Now, I want to tell you one important thing about these two tools. Now, they share the same blade, and kudos to the guys in engineering who came up with this, because what I'm going to do, obviously blades are consumable items and we do sell them separately, but you see, if you just slide the top off there, it exposes the blade. Now, if we look at this blade, you'll notice that when you're using it as a paper trimmer, you're only using the center of the blade. The tip never actually comes into contact with the paper. So if this becomes blunt, as blades do over time, then simply slip that out and replace it. However, with this guy, let's pop it on there, because I want to show you how to take the blade out. So I'm just holding it between my thumb and finger and twisting. That's out. Then to put it back in, all I do is twist it. So that's tight now, that's gripping there. Now, if I take that one out, obviously, say the blade is blunt, but the rest of it is fine. So if I put that back into here, like this, if I just slide that into place, that is as good as new for this tool. Even though the tip from cutting might be blunt, it's good to go. So I'll slide that housing back on there. Isn't that a great design? That's really, really cool, isn't it? So it takes the blades from your, because a lot of these paper trimmers, a lot of the commercial ones, a lot of the ones you see, you can't replace the blades. Are there some out there you can replace? I don't know. I've not seen them. But there we are. Now, remember the blade that we took out of this earlier? You can now place that into your craft knife, because even though the middle part of the blade has become blunt from use with the trimmer, the tip is as good as new. So basically, you can just switch them between each other. One's blunt, keep it for the other tool, and vice versa. All in all, a pretty cool kit. Okay, so let's take a look at the Sizzix Effectz Craft Tool Set. Now, Effectz, of course, refers to a range of Sizzix products, a lot of acrylics, pastes. We're going to have a look at some of them in a second. But this is for somebody who likes to work with mixed media, or maybe you like to just use a palette to manipulate your acrylics, or say you want to apply pastes or glazes through a stencil. This is absolutely ideal for you, and these are tools that I've been using for years and years. And let's take a quick look. So out it comes. We've got two palette knives. They're two distinctly different shapes, and there is a reason for that, which we will get into in a second. Of course, we have our ergonomic double-ended handle and our end cap. Now, this is one where I really would use one tool at a time. Last but not least, we have our brayer roller. Now, this is removable. So if you need to clean it, you just clip it off like that. Snaps back into position. Really easy to keep clean. One thing I like about all of these tools, and I'm going to mention that before we get into demonstrating them, is if I click that in place, you'll notice this here, this depression, this divot. So if you want to be using pressure with this tool, so if we're really pressing down on something, then use your thumb there. Because with tools, sometimes you use pressure, the handle can bend, break, whatever. But having that divot there, and the same with these palette knives, you know, if you're using them quite vigorously, as we do from time to time, you can actually put your thumb in that divot. So thanks to the design and engineering guys for bringing that to these tools. It really does make a difference. I'm going to start by taking a look at a brayer. So we'll take some creamy acrylic. This is from the Sizzix Effectz range. This color is Primrose. And I'm using these two colors. In fact, I could choose any combination from the Effectz range, but I'm using Primrose and Lavender Dust, which are two particular favorites of mine. So let's just pop a bit of that out there. Remember, always start off, less is more. So you don't want to put a huge blob. If you need more, you can add more. So there we are. And you can see that I'm rolling this out now. And as I'm going, I'm lifting the brayer, because what I want to get is I want to get a really even coating on there. I don't want it too heavy in one place and light in another. So I just keep going back and two, like that. And if I take a piece of white card and start moving across there, I can get a lovely, almost like I can fade this out. It's like a monochromatic ombre effect in many ways. And you're always going to get these marks with a brayer. That's absolutely fine. That's nothing that we're afraid of at all. But you can also flood the color if you want to do that. You can add pearlescent, well, where's my tin? I'll show you actually. We've got some lovely pearlescent mediums, so you can add that to your paint to create a pearlescent effect. Now, I think I'm going to show that in a second actually. That could be fun. Now, there. That is my Lavender Dust, and I'm not even cleaning up my brayer. I'm just going straight in with my Primrose. Again, lift, let it roll through. Let it lift, you're getting a lovely even covering. And I'm going to start at the base like so. And we'll just go over there, and I'm going to work into the Lavender Dust. Like this, just back and two. So as I'm rolling this, there's less and less paint on the mat and more paint on the card. So we're getting that lovely kind of ombre effect. And you know what? You can take this, it can be a background. You can even emboss, because one of the great things about the Effectz acrylics is they have a wonderful surface, and they don't crack when they emboss. So here's a couple of examples of what I've just done using using that very technique, after which, once it's dried, we emboss them. So we've got a metallic rose gold there, going into primrose, going into, I think that color is mango tango. And here you can see that's probably ballet slipper into the lavender dust. So very, very effective, but great if you just want to create backgrounds. Now, another way that you can use these, in fact, you know what, I'm going to turn that over, because I like to do what I call, I like to do these little boards from which I can die cut, because we do have some wonderful colored cardstock. But you know what? And this time I'm not taking much care and attention. I'm just going back into, I want it on the roller, but you'll see this kind of effect that I'm getting. And you know, when you blend two colors as well, it looks really, really cool. But that is broken. That's a broken finish. You can add some white to that. You can add some black. You can add whatever you want. In fact, I mean, that's part of the fun of techniques like that. So let's get a bit more. Let's just get a little bit of lavender dust on there. I'm going to come in with that, and that will add a bit more kind of interest to that. Now, imagine die cutting some florals from that, rather than just from plain old cardstock. And I'm going to show you an example of something I've done. And these were boards that I did using some different colors of our acrylics, you see, and you can see the florals that have been cut from them, like so. So that's a very fresh green. There's different depths. One's a very blue green. So all the foliage and all the florals, when we put them together, it's pretty stunning. But that's how I like to use that technique, and that's where my brayer comes in so handy. Now let's talk about palette knives. It's a really simple tool, but you wouldn't believe how much development time went into getting the perfect palette knives. Everybody had sets. We tested them. We were asked what our favorite sizes. Do we like the plastic ones? Do we like the steel ones? Well, we like the steel ones because of the rounded edges. The plastic ones tend to have what we call flashing. You know, you don't get a really smooth transfer with those. They're okay, but not perfect. But I like the flex of a plastic one. So what we did, we came up with these two sizes, which we thought fulfilled 99.999% of what you could ever want. No, let's say 100% from a palette knife. But what I like about them particularly is there are no harsh, sharp edges on these. They're really flat and smooth. So that means the application of your mediums or your paints will be equally as smooth. Let's start off with the larger of the two. And I'm going to bring in those two colors of acrylics again. That's my lavender dust there, and also my primrose. Now, obviously, one of the prime functions of a palette knife is to apply acrylic, and you can get some really interesting effects, some wonderful backgrounds. And I'm going to take the lavender dust, and I'm going to move it like that, and see how I lift it away at the end there, so you can have a smooth, continuous flow. And it is super smooth, so the more you put on, the more of that you get. But when you start to lift, and you're getting texture as well, and you can even get texture by tapping it, which is great with dimensional pastes and so on and so forth. But you can also take that, you can smooth it out, you can blend together. Thus, lovely combination there. So, I mean, we've got a little piece of modern art right there. Yeah, there's so much you can do with the tip. You can drag that through the center. We can come over the top again. Just play around with the mediums, get some really interesting effects with these, and that's just about spreading paint onto card. And you can see, I'm going to bring in a couple of things that I did a while back. Just using lavender dust, and this is Arctic Sky, this lovely blue here. And then this one, again, slightly different vibe going on, and I'll show these to the front in a second. And this one, and you'll see we also use our expand paste through a stencil there. So they're both done using a palette knife, both of those effects, and there's that lovely background again. So palette knives are really useful. That's what I tend to use that large one for, but I also use it for applying mediums through stencils as well. Let's take a look at our short palette knife. This is the shorter of the two, and this is the one I tend to use for blending different pastes, blending different glazes, acrylics, and so on and so forth. So I've got some of our effects range here. We've got gesso primer, we've got prism paste, we've got crystal glaze, one of my particular favorites, pearlescent medium, this stuff, wow, I'm going to show you in a second. We've got dimensional paste, which is a classic, of course. Expand paste, really unique. Remember we looked a second ago at these cards? That's expand paste, that's the effect you get. And of course, 3D adhesive, which is perfect when using your foils or flakes. Now, we'll put most of those to one side. I'm going to leave my dimensional paste and my pearlescent medium. And then what I'm going to do is take a little bit of, again, we're going with the primrose and the lavender dust. So I'll put a little bit there and there, because a lot of our products, expand paste, the gesso primer, crystal glaze as well, pearlescent medium, and dimensional paste, you can actually add the acrylics to them. So if you want to get dimensional paste which isn't white, you want it to be a color, it could be black, you can add to them, which is really, really useful. They are blendable, in other words. So let's take some of this lovely gloopy paste out of there. There we are. And we'll put a little bit by there. So what I want to do now is add my acrylics. So if I take that and just, you see what I mean? This tip, it's quite wonderful for making sure that the acrylic and the dimensional paste actually blend together perfectly like that. So you just keep going until you get a really smooth, even color, and you can pick it up, you can put it down. It's like using a mini trowel, I guess. So for mixing and blending, really, really useful. So let's take a paper towel, just wipe that off, and then I'll take some of my lavender dust and do exactly the same thing. There we are, so you can see that taking shape. Now, obviously we've got some lovely dimensional paste there in two glorious, glorious colors. Let's pop that back down there, and now we've got these mixed exactly how I want them. And it's time to bring in this pearlescent medium. Now, you may have overlooked this, but it's a wonderful, wonderful product, because of course you love your acrylic paints, and we love pearlized acrylics as well, but this gives you the best of both worlds, because if you want to turn that acrylic paint, so I'm just going to get that much, that's all it takes, a little bit more for that. It's got a lovely creamy finish. You can use it by yourself, and you can use it with a brayer over other surfaces to get a lovely pearlized finish. But once I start to blend this into the paint, you notice and see how well having that pointed tip, that makes a big, big difference. It really does. Then we'll come in to our lavender dust, blend that into there, and you can see it's taking on that lovely pearlescent sheen already, and it's so super smooth. It is important that you keep mixing it until you get it all together. So now, those two, we started off with acrylics, then we moved on to our dimensional paste, and finally our pearlescent medium. And what we made there is a product of our own devising, which has a wonderful, wonderful opulence. And this is a die cut. It's from one of Tim Holt's mixed media set. It's just something I die cut it out of the card. So I'm going to be using my own stencil for this. So if I place that down onto the card, let me take some of the pink and pop it right there, because at this point I want to switch heads. This is where I like to use this one. I can use the other one, it doesn't really matter. It's just I prefer this one for a long, smooth finish, like so. And I can see that pearlescent sheen coming through there. And if I just wipe that off, pick up some of the lavender dust, boom, over the top. So I'm going to get a two-tone effect. Let's blend those in together. I can pick up some more of that. Wow, really cool. And then when we peel that away, fantastic dimensional effect. You can really, if I twist this, you can really see that pearlescent medium coming out. So you can see why it's important to have those two palette knives. And as I say, they will do just about anything you're going to need from a palette knife. I've got my stencil and stamp tool in front of me, and I've created this wonderful Christmas wreath with this gorgeous set. And you'll see I've used different ink colors on each level. Some of them I blended, some of them not. But when you're doing this, you can actually add a dimensional medium on one level. The thing is just choosing, now do I have frosted berries or do I pick up those lovely blue colors? I'm sort of torn, but I am going to go with this one. I'm going to go with the blues. And what I'm going to choose is my, where is it? It's my favorite. It's my crystal glaze. I love this. Crystal glaze is a clear, well, it looks milky, but it dries perfectly clear. So when I show it you, when I take away the stencil, you're not gonna see it immediately, but when I show you an example afterwards, it's going to become apparent. So I could do what I just did with the pearlescent medium and the dimension paste. It's entirely up to you what you want to do. You know, if you want to put 3D glue through this and then apply your foils afterwards, go ahead, be my guest. But I'm just going to bring the glaze, and again, using the larger of the two palette knives, it gives you a lovely, even, flat spread. So we just bring that through those lovely leaves there, maybe just a bit more down the bottom here. So not only is it giving the dimension, it's giving a lovely, glossy, glazed finish, but as this product has that gorgeous glitter running through it, it's going to be something else. So I'll simply scrape that off on the pot, pop it just down for a second, and let's take a look. So as I said, at the moment it's kind of milky. Put my stencil to one side, but if I hold this up to the light and start to move it about, you can see how that glaze, not just the glaze, not just the glitter, but also the dimension of the product makes a tremendous difference. And let's show you a couple of examples of things I've done with that. So that's exactly the same stencil, colored slightly different, but you know, we're using the glaze through that. We trim it to size and it's ready to go. Or maybe use it partially like this. So we created the whole thing, and I actually cut this in half and I used the other piece on a separate card. Now the glaze itself, using the palette knife, how about just putting it onto clear acetate like that? That's with a die cut stencil, that one. So we created our own stencil for that, and that's just the glaze by itself. But you know, we talked about how you can blend as well. And if you blend together your crystal glaze with some dye inks, you can create these gorgeous, gorgeous colors. And because you've got the glaze, because you've got the glitter, there's an opulence which is quite otherworldly. And from that, you can see that I've die cut these trees. So once you put the glaze, once you've blended it, and we're using our palette knife incidentally to get that blend, to get that spread, then you can die cut it like that, or you can just pop it straight through a stencil. So cut one of your trees, which creates a stencil from the negative, and you can put that lovely inked glaze straight through like that. Pretty cool product. I'm going to use my gorgeous Arctic Sky acrylic. It's a lovely, lovely light color. gorgeous light blue, exactly as the name suggests. And what I'm going to do this time, I'm going to use my brayer, something that is really useful now. Of course, we've talked about acrylics. You can also apply distress inks and distress oxides. You can lift these, or indeed any other ink pad, and you can apply them to your cardstock as well. But what I'm going to do this time is roll this out really smooth. Now, if this was white paint, you know how the holy grail is getting a white ink pad that actually stamps really intensely. Some are better than others. So what I'm going to do is, I've got this lovely snowflake stamp here, and I'm running that, and I'm using my brayer. That's quite important. So I'm going to stamp, remember this background that we did earlier? I'm going to come down there. It's a very subtle, very delicate kind of stamp. So it's creating, again, a background effect. So this is something whereby you want to stick something over the top of this, maybe a die cut, I don't know, whatever your preference is. Let's get one more going. So with just that little bit of paint, we've created 3, and we're going to go for 4 separate snowflakes. So if this was white, it would be really, really punchy, but I wanted to use the blue so it shows better against the matte. So that is pretty neat as a background. Of course, we'll wash this straight away, but I've got some of this Arctic sky still on here like this. I'm going to add just a touch more, because I want to show you another thing that I love, not just about palette knives, but this one particularly, because I'm going to pick it up and pop it onto the handle. So we'll remove that one, and then just clip it on and twist. It's ready to go. It's so quick and easy. I cannot tell you how quick and easy it is. So you see, I'm trying to get this paint to a kind of a milky consistency. And if I take a little bit more water, spritz into that, because what I want to do now is I want to use my palette knife. Now, if I want big blobs, I'll put my thumb there. If I want smaller blobs, I'll put my thumb there. And I will change where that is, because what I'm doing now, I'm flicking this paint on it. And there are products that do this, but this is the most controllable. Using a palette knife like this allows me to, it's still a random technique, but it does allow me to control exactly, not exactly, but it gives me far more precision than with anything else I can think of. Also, it gives me a variation in the size of the blob. So if I take some more and roll my thumb down this way, you see that in the center? Boom. Now, if I bring it back, bring my thumb back down to here, I can get those lovely small little blobs. And it's really cool. It's something you can use with a mask and do that over the top and then lift it away. Or you can do it through a stencil. It's a lovely, lovely technique. But there we have it. How about that? Pretty cool. So there we have it. We've got our intricate, our surfaces, and our effects kit. And you know what? We've barely scratched the surface. There's so much more to these. You will be seeing coming up in the coming weeks and months from all our designers how we like to use these, some of our favorite techniques, and so on and so forth. But I think it's given you an idea of what these kits are all about. So thank you for joining me today. I'll see you again soon.